Thank you, Usha. Thank you. And let me first start with congratulating Bhaskar and the team for a phenomenal 4 years or 5 years. I think this is the 4th edition of Cypher, and every year we come here, we realize that it's getting bigger and bigger, just as the community of AI practitioners. So good morning, all of you. Usha, it's not fair to peg us against Ravi or Rahul Subramaniam. You know, I'm sure his session will probably evoke the maximum number of awards. Speaking about awards, what I wanted to do today was to talk about what's in it for us in the AI race. You know, while a lot of leaders talk about us as a potential global powerhouse, I want to urge all of you to start thinking about the possibility of us, you know, being the leader in the AI race, all right? Firstly, it's heartening to see so many people assemble at 9:30 in the morning. It's probably a testament to the inspiration and I guess the interest, the intrigue that this whole topic is bringing out amongst everyone. It's also a testament to what you know, Bhaskar and team have done year over year to curate such a fabulous event. And my only caveat for this session would be that don't judge the book by its cover. I'm confident, and I assure you the sessions after mine would be far more compelling and interesting, all right? So bear with me for a few minutes. We don't have an Indian in this race. Hopefully very soon we'll have one. But starting with AI. So AI is everywhere. What you see on the left is our own tuk-tuks, our auto rickshaw guys, who've been, you know, quite benevolent in terms of using their real estate to talk about AI. So it's very much in the public space, and I'm sure, you know, you must have seen numerous, you know, ads talking about the need to upskill ourselves with this new and emerging science. What is also interesting is that AI is getting into our private lives as well. The picture on the right hand side is a picture from a public restroom in Beijing, China, where of course for folks that are following policies in China would probably be aware of this massive issue that the Chinese government are dealing with, which is toilet paper pilferage. Are you aware of that? You know, people, you know, steal toilet paper. So what they've done is they've got this machine which has got the facial recognition software, and it essentially looks at you, checks your biometrics, and then regulates the amount of toilet paper that needs to be given to you. So I really pity the guy who's having a bad day and a bad stomach. I don't know if there is intelligence in that software to tell you whether you're suffering from a bad stomach or having a normal motion. So that's where we are. So it's everywhere. You just cannot ignore it. It's there, publicly available. It's there in places where we want to be just with ourselves and have a quiet time. We're also hearing a lot from global leaders. Of course, you know, Sundar Pichai, which is, you know, who is a source of inspiration for all of us here in India, talks about AI, you know, being more profound than electricity and fuel. And interestingly, he used that word electricity and fire. Both of them symbolizes energy, both of them symbolizes revolution. And what we're saying is that AI could actually energize organizations, individuals, society, and revolutionize everything that touches us. So the global leaders are talking about AI. What is also interesting is the immense amount of money that is being pumped in the field of AI. What you have from the West, which is US, which we know seems like a very paltry sum, because, you know, you would expect US to be putting much more than $2 billion, but this is the reported number. UK is looking at around 1.5. China is expecting this AI industry to grow to $1 trillion by 2030. South Korea has pumped in another $2 billion. Japan, another $4 billion. So every single country is betting big on AI, both for its internal requirements as well as to essentially capitalize on this large market that is out there in front of us. India is not far behind, as studies indicate. We are number 3 in terms of AI implementation. We also expect the revenues that are coming out of AI over the next 7 to 8 years to be around $1 trillion, roughly around 957, compared to what China is estimating, which is in excess of $1 trillion. Also evident is the number of initiatives that the government has done. I think earlier this year, as I'm sure most of you are aware of, our own Honorable Prime Minister dedicated Wadhwani AI Institute specifically towards propelling the use of AI towards societal causes. We have the Dream Team, which is the AI task force, which has ministries from various departments, defense, electronics, and IT and so on along with Niti Aayog, who are specifically looking at initiatives where, you know, we can look at propelling the development as well as the growth of AI in the country. Our finance minister has been a lot more generous. He's pumped in twice as much money that was done last year, which is in the tune of around 3,000 plus crores. And there's a number of initiatives that we're seeing across the country, which we call it as Digital India, whether it is around payments, the open, data.gov, which is the platform to democratize the public data to help organizations leverage the fullest power of AI. We've got a number of digital initiatives around skilling, around digital payments, and so on and on. So essentially the stage is set, and when you look at all these things, you would ask yourself, you're probably well set to lead. And I would say the same thing too, that looking at the entire nexus of forces and what's around us, it seems very evident that India is in the forefront of AI. We have one of the largest, talent base. If you look at some of the numbers, this is from 2016, 2.6 million people that actually have graduates from STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and maths. We've got the largest number of AI professionals operating in the country. We are number 3 when it comes to the AI penetration. So again, one of the fundamental things is talent, and we've got that in plenty. We see a massive, evolution in the startup ecosystem. Over 5,000 plus startups, which is the 3rd largest hub for entrepreneurship. You got startups which are at different stages of CAGR. You got 700 plus, which are growing at a rate of 25 to 30%. Around 200 plus, which is growing at a rate of 75%. And I'm sure, Bhaskar's aim is somewhere there too. We got 340 million plus, dollars in funding, of which 25% is in advanced analytics and so on. We got 190 plus institutions or incubators or accelerators which are working with the startups and the enterprise to bring together an ecosystem to drive the accelerated growth in AI. And of course, we've got a number of policies, by government and institutions such as NASSCOM and what have you to drive standardization in this. So again, a lot of great initiatives when it comes to entrepreneurship, just like how we have in terms of the talent base. We've got the investments. Interesting enough, we are probably in the 20th year. We've got MNCs, initially started by the financial services and then by retailers and now by e-commerce players, and a lot of technology companies that are investing big in India to tap into this talent base. So you name it, those organizations have a base here. Indian organizations, one which I represent, Aditya Birla Group, and my team is also, banking big on analytics and is setting up the bases in India to capitalize on the emerging trends as well as the rich talent base and its application to transform businesses. So you got all of this as well as an important aspect, which is mobilizing the overall effort, a concerted effort towards this. So to summarize, what you see on the left-hand side is all green, which is part of our flag. We've got immense amount of money. We've got government initiatives. We've got anticipated growth, which is 8x to where we are today. We have a strong analytics ecosystem of startups, and we also have a rich talent pool. So when you look at all of this, you say, man, we are there. We definitely should be getting at least a bronze or a silver. But the question is, are we ready for gold? So while all of you are sitting here and you're feeling good about it, my only urge for you today and for the next 3 days is ask yourself, what will take us to be the leader in this race? Because there are still a number of challenges that we need to encounter. There's still a number of hurdles that we need to overcome. The first is, of course, the data quality. There's still challenges, when it comes to the basics of data capture. Then there is things related to price and sensitivity. I'm sure there are a lot of our analytics partners here who scratch their head every time they go to an Indian company saying that, look, they don't understand. So the desire to invest big or double down on analytics is still not there. So how do we drive that level of concerted effort where companies and organizations are looking at investing big and looking at experimenting with new applications of AI? Change management, of course, you can't teach a dog new tricks, but immense amount of effort is required in terms of channelizing and in changing the way the decisions are being made through the use of AI. Tech infrastructure, I touched upon data capture. Again, a lot of investments are required, whether it is in factories with sensors, or whether it is in our POS systems, or whether it is the way we are capturing unstructured data across the different types of information flow. There is still a lot of investments to be made by the CIO and the CTO community so that we are putting in the foundation efforts to capture this information. And unfortunately, it's not not an easy task, because when you set up when you make the investments and set up the infrastructure, you don't get the returns right away. It sometimes takes you 6 months, year, 2 years before the investments, starts showing results. And organizations at times don't have the patience to do so. So we have to work with them to help them understand, what's the big picture, while also showing them successes through small pilots. And the last but not the least is the sole aspect of, can the data augment and improve my decision making? So while there are a lot of great things that are out there, there are also some challenges that we need to encounter. And when we do that, I truly believe that, we will be in the forefront, when it comes to AI across the globe. So where are we? I think this is just an illustrative view of how we are placed vis-a-vis, some of the other big players. What you have are the 4 dimensions. Of course, there are many more dimensions you could rate the countries, but I'm looking at research, innovation, investment, and talent. What you have are the 5 countries. Of course, there are many more. You've got India, you've got US, you've got UK, China, and Israel. And what you see is each of them, barring US, which, if you look at the bell curve, barring US, which is probably the leader in all of these space, have some capability or the other which is second to none, or probably in the leading areas. So our research innovation, as we understand, is probably not as strong compared to the talent and the new sources of investments that are being pumped into India. But when you look at US, across the 4 areas, they're doing pretty good, when it comes to in research, innovation, startups, investments, talent, and so on. So as you look across, Israel stands out when it comes to their investments, their research and innovation. UK stands out when it comes to innovation. China stands out when it comes to the research, investment, as well as talent. So, of course, it's an open race. US does have a head start, but there is still enough out there for us to strive and perhaps be one of the leaders, in the space. So eventually, when you look at all these parameters, it just boils down to 2 things. Where do we stand in the innovation scale? Where do we stand on the innovation axis, and where do we stand on the scale? So what you see here is India, while it has scale, which is us, the ecosystem, the opportunities for the application of AI, I think there are still opportunities in terms of what we can push ourselves to move the needle on research, on innovation, and so on and on. Whereas when you look at some of the other countries which are big on innovation, case in point is Israel, they don't have the scale, but they have a very methodical process in terms of driving new age, cutting edge technologies and applications of AI in many sectors. So eventually, the one that's going to win the race is the one which reaches the top quadrant. The one that offers both scale as well as the ability to innovate in the respective sectors. Are we there yet? No, but we believe we have the necessary ingredients. We believe that we have the necessary know-how in order to essentially now start looking into the areas where we can innovate. And there are enough sectors and enough applications within India, whether it's education, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, financial services, where I do believe that AI innovation could come out of India. So what do we need to do? So there are 5 things that I believe that we could perhaps look into, and these 5 are the 5 ecosystems or the 5 nexus of forces which will propel the AI innovation in India. The first is campuses. Of course, there are a number of campuses that we are seeing is instilling the entrepreneurial spirit, but what we want each of the campuses to do, or each of the institutions in India to do, and that's my urge to them, is to create on-campus entrepreneurs. Make sure that every single student that graduates from an undergrad program or from a master's program has one of the projects which is entrepreneurial in nature. It has to be a product, it has to be an application, it has to be a new innovative idea, and that should be the thesis. That should be the final output, so that it brings in the spirit of innovation. And if it is good, the institutions themselves could fund it, or it could attract into the VC community, which will help those students to give life to the idea. So that's my first task. And of course, there are opportunities in terms of our campus programs to actually have a lot more applied analytics as opposed to only theoretical. And I believe that a joint investment from the analytics ecosystem, such as us, as well as from organizations, industries that we all represent, in terms of making the curriculum a lot more operational, a lot more applied oriented, would help the students to understand what are the business problems they could solve for, and how could they solve with new and innovative ways of applying AI. Right. The second ecosystem that I would bring up is the business fabric. I think there's still opportunities in terms of what businesses could do, whether it is the culture of experimentation or test and learn, whether it is setting up innovation hubs, partnering with the startup ecosystem, working closely with the government, working closely with as a consortium of industries to see how could we drive AI into every single business decision. And I think there is a strong element of endorsement and a strong element of change that is really important for organizations, to help not only support, but also cultivate a spirit of innovation within the enterprises, but also around us. The third is, responsible AI. I touched upon what Niti Aayog and the government of India is doing. Of course, there are many other institutions, private and public, that are working very closely. But it's absolutely important that we give assurance, we give peace not only to the consumers, both the institutions as well as individuals, in terms of what AI could do. There is a potential to transform a country with AI. There's also a potential to disrupt and to destroy a country with AI. So it's important that these institutions, help socialize the right applications as well as safeguard the policies or safeguard the various areas of leakage or failures, which AI could potentially could also result in. So again, my ask of them is, what could we do in terms of democratizing AI, in terms of socializing it, as well as safeguarding the policies. The fourth is the startups as well. And whenever we talk about, who are the startups we should look into, and of course, there are, over 6,000 plus startups in India. But the first one that comes to our mind is, okay, let's go to the Bay Area and look at what the startups are doing, or let's go to Israel, or let's go to Germany. But why is it that we don't start from here? What is it that our startups could do? What could they do in terms of bringing the same level of professionalism? What could they do in terms of bringing in the same level of patience? What could they do in terms of curating the applications so that when they talk to a business head, the business head understands that this guy speaks my language, he or she understands my problem, and is able to come up with a solution which is tailor-made for me. Not only that, what could startups do where they are not only thinking globally, but they're acting global, right? They need to execute locally, whether it's for India or Philippines, Indonesia, or the other markets, but they need to look at platforms which are more global in nature. Only then would these startups will be put at par at the same scale as some of the others like Palantir and what have you. So that's the fourth one. And the last is us as a community. I think there's a huge responsibility and onus on us. I think if we want to really cherish the success, and if we really want to feel proud about us being the leaders, there's immense amount of effort that is required in terms of evangelizing it. I think conferences such as us should not only have participants from the analytics community, but from business leaders, so that they understand what's happening around the world, so that they are open to more outside-in view. So a lot of effort is required in just evangelizing and making them aware of the potential of AI. Change management in terms of driving the experimentation, making sure we have the right guardrails around it, making sure we have the right components of value discovery, metrics associated with the experiments that are wrapped around these solutions. And the last is establish credibility, capability, and success in areas that we do believe are the ones where we have an innate advantage, both because of scale and our sectoral presence, as well as the thought leadership that we have, where we can be at par, if not better than the rest of the world. So those are my five. It's the academia, it's the startups, it's the government institutions, it's us as a community of this, and finally the organizations. And if we don't do that, I do believe that we're going to miss the train. And they say opportunity does not knock the door twice, but in this case it has. If you recall, 25 years back, ITES, Information Technology Services, was at the same state. Today, when we look at ITES, of course, we've offered scale. People think about India as the hub, when they look at scaling up, when you look at global implementations, when they're looking at standardization, centralization, and all that. We don't want the same thing to happen to AI. We don't want India to be seen as the place where, fine, I'm going to push my development here, or I'm going to push the scaling up aspect here. We need to be seen not only as the market of choice when it comes to scale, but the market of choice when it comes to innovation. So I urge you to start, thinking not only in terms of building this capability, but in terms of innovating in this space. Thank you.